So how are you?
Good.
Good.
Good, thanks.
Made up there, back okay, and
All in one piece. Those interstates are.
let me tell you my story.
We ready?
I came back from home.
Okay, it's 6 p.m. Let's get started with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, please turn on your microphones and turn off your cell phones. Andrea, roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Quinlan,
Here.
Councilor Anderson, Councilor Bain, Councilor Baker, Councilor Becker, Councilor Dykes.
Okay. Y'all have a copy of the minutes of the meeting, the regular meeting of May 23rd. Are there any corrections? Not. They stand approved as submitted. Okay, visitors and delegation. Anybody here that would like to speak that's not on the agenda? No? Okay. Let's move on to 4A, the flood insurance rate map, firm project update. Twee.
Okay, is that on? Can you hear me? Okay. So for the record, I'm Twee Patton, the Floodplain Mapping Coordinator at the Colorado Water Conservation Board. Thank you for this opportunity tonight to talk about the Morgan County FEMA flood map update. In particular, I'll be talking about the update for the city of Brush. Here's an agenda for the presentation. It's just a very brief presentation. Started out with the introductions, and then I'll talk about the purpose of the map update, a little bit about the map program background, and then I'll get into the specifics of the City of Brush map update, and then what the next steps are, and then I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie DiBattito, who will talk about the insurance and compliance side of things, and then I'll take any questions at the end. So before I begin, I just want to say that it is a FEMA program, so there are a lot of acronyms, but I'll try to explain those up front so that we're not all talking strange lingo up here. So I did the introductions. I also wanted to just mention we do work closely with FEMA Region 8, which is located, their office is located in Denver. And the contacts for FEMA are David Sutley and Matt Buddy. And so I work with David on the mapping side, and Stephanie works with Matt Buddy on the insurance and compliance side. So why did we update the floodplain maps in Morgan County? Well, Morgan County, including the City of Brush, participates in the National Flood Insurance Program, first of all. And you guys have been in the program since 1973, if you were not aware of that. The first maps were issued in 1977 and revised in 1981. So those maps are about 35 years old. So I think things might have changed around here in the past 35 years. So we definitely want to identify the current and accurate flood risk in the area. These maps are also used for flood insurance rating, so we want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date and accurate flood risk data for people to plan, and if they want to purchase flood insurance, that they have the correct data from which they're making those decisions. And also these maps are used by the local community officials when they're planning for new development or for emergency management purposes. So, for example, trying to determine the evacuation routes for critical facilities such as hospitals, schools, and nursing homes. So these maps are also used for those purposes. So I'll talk a little bit about the mapping program. The map modernization program started in early 2000s. I think it was 2001. And it was a 5-year program. It is a FEMA map program. And the main purpose of that program was to update FEMA flood maps nationwide because they were paper maps, mostly developed back in the 70s and 80s. And so FEMA wanted to update those maps and bring them into the 20th, 21st century. And so that program started in 2002 and ended in about 2008. The Colorado Water Conservation Board did sign up as a cooperating technical partner, or a CTP, and it's a program that we are in with FEMA, which means we can receive funding from FEMA for these map update projects. So when that program ended back in 2008, Colorado was still about halfway through updating the FEMA flood maps in our state, and that's due to just inaccurate data. When we were meeting with communities, we found that the local flood data was not correct. There wasn't any topo data, so we didn't get very far in that update. And then in 2009 was when we started the Morgan County DFIRM, or Digital Flood Insurance Rate map update. Let's see. One of the things I want to mention about this map program is that when we did that map update, previously the FEMA flood maps were updated community by community, so a lot of times you'll see the floodplain map limits end at the community boundaries, which we know water doesn't stop at the community lines. So with this overall program, we were trying to make it more seamless so that they were large-scale map updates and they were county-wide format. And so with this map update, you'll see that the delineations are, it was updated on a county-wide basis and included all the communities in Morgan County. And then in 2009, the program transitioned into what we now know as the Risk Map program. So we're still updating the FEMA floodplain maps, but in addition to that, the program is now expanded to provide flood risk awareness to community officials and the public at large, and also to provide assistance with flood mitigation. So when we started the map update, it was mainly a conversion from the paper maps to a digital format for Morgan County. For the city of Brush, there was a letter of map revision, or a LOMR, that was done a few years ago. And so when that analysis was done, what we did was take that and we're incorporating that into the large-scale map update. So there wasn't any additional analysis or work that we did as part of the map modernization work. We just took that and incorporated it so it's all seamless. Those preliminary maps were distributed to Morgan County and all the communities on March 16th of this year. Oops. So now I'll talk a little bit more in detail about the map update for the city of Brush. As I mentioned, the LOMR was completed back in 2012, and it was done by a firm called AECOM. They were contracted by CDOT, and it was initiated because they wanted to replace the I-76 bridge over Beaver Creek. And so when they were in that process, FEMA said, we would like you to update the hydraulic model and find out what the impacts will be. And so from that study, I just want to point out the two main items that stood out. And one is that when they did that analysis, they found that the flow rates, the discharge, was reduced by about 30%. So previously, in the effective flood insurance study for Beaver Creek done back in the 1970s, the flow rate was 55,200 cubic feet per second, and that flow was calculated through regression equations. And so with this LOMR that was done a few years ago, they did a more detailed analysis and found that that number was too high, and so now it's reduced. It's down to 38,400. So that was a big change from the study. And then the other big change was the original study did not include 5 structures or 5 crossings on Beaver Creek through the city. And so AECOM had to go back and recreate that original model and include those 5 structures to come up with a new existing conditions model.
I've got a question. Those structures, is one of those the span of the interstate bridge?
Yes, I'm gonna show you
okay, gotcha.
those locations on this next. And I don't know, can you guys see that very well? So the first structure, let's see if it's I don't know what I did. Look at the pointer is. Oh, okay. Okay, so the first structure is I-76, so right up here. And then County Road 29 here. And then it's the rail embankment number 1, located up here. And then the fourth structure is State Highway 34, right here. And then the last crossing that was included in the model is the rail embankment number 3, which is located right here. So those are the 5 structures that were not in the original model that they had to put back in the model now and show the new existing conditions model for Beaver Creek. And the results are shown here. So what you see here is the updated floodplain limits for the city of Brush. What you see in red is the floodway delineation. The area in blue is the 100-year floodplain with base flood elevations. The area in orange are the is also a 100-year floodplain, but it's an approximate 100 years, so there are no base flood elevations associated with those areas. And then the area in green is the 500-year floodplain. And then you can see what was there previously in the purple line outline there. That was what was delineated in previously. I just put this map together to show you what it looks like on the FEMA map. That's what you'll see on the FEMA Map Service Center, and when they determine the flood insurance rates, they'll be using this map to make that determination. So just a little history here on the map. So the one on the left here is the effective map for City of Brush right now. And again, that was done back in 1981. And as I mentioned earlier, we did the mapping community by community, and so it's like two puzzle pieces. So you see there this line here, the city limits is supposed to match this city line or this community line here. So you put the 2 pieces together with the City of Brush and Morgan County. That was done in 1989, and that's your current floodplain delineations. Here's another comparison of the 1981 map and the one that we have proposed, the preliminary maps currently. So just a couple things to point out. So here's Mill Street here. There's Mill Street. Here's Ray Street here. And there's Ray Street here for your reference. So you see north of Mill Street is where there's an increase in the floodplain, or increased flood risk. And then south of Mill, there is a little bit of decrease there. What you see here in the dark gray is the 100-year. This is the floodway with the hatching. And then the light gray is your 500-year floodplain limits. So the next steps, again, those preliminary maps were released March 16th. We did meet with the community officials on May 4th to go over the maps and then answer any questions and comments that they had on the maps. The next step is to have that public meeting. It's scheduled right now for July 12th. And then after the public meeting, we do 2 publications in the local newspapers. After the second newspaper publication, we do go through a 90-day appeal period. So at that time, anyone can submit an appeal. It does have to be technically based. So updated topography or survey data, things like that would count as technical data. And then it'll go through a period where we try to resolve those appeals depending on what we get. We don't know what we're going to get. You guys might have a better idea about that. And then it'll go into a 6-month compliance period. And at that time, we will be sending out a letter of final determination, or an LFD. And on that letter will be the date of the effective map. So you'll know in advance what that date will be. And right now we're thinking that will be around this time next year. for those maps to become effective. So now I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie to talk a little bit about insurance and compliance.
Hi, I'm Stephanie DiPetito, the National Flood Insurance Program Coordinator with the Colorado Water Conservation Board. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about your flood insurance and what this means now that the maps are going effective. These new maps will be used to administer the local floodplain regulations, and they're also going to be used to set the flood insurance rate premiums. A common misperception about flood insurance is that it's only available to those who are in these high flood risk areas, but it's actually available to anyone who wants to purchase it. They get a better rate for it, and now that you know or have a better idea of the actual risk and how close you are to these high flood risks, it's not a bad idea to buy flood insurance, even if you're outside of the floodplain. About 25% of claims occur outside of the special flood hazard area. So there are different types of situations that may happen that you'll see here in Brush, and that could be that if you're in the low risk area, you might be moving into a high risk area, or you can see areas where we're moving from high to low. If you're moving from a high risk to a low risk area, you can now still keep that flood insurance but get a better rate for it. And if you're moving into a high flood risk area and you weren't in one before, by purchasing the insurance before the maps go effective, you'll get a preferred risk policy. So you'll be able to buy a policy at the rate it is before the map goes effective. Within 12 months of the maps going effective, you can still buy that flood insurance at the preferred risk policy, but it will go up no more than 18% each year until it meets the actuarial rate. And those are things to keep in mind, and I'm sure we'll probably go through that at the public meeting as well. And that's about the basics, and I'll take any questions if you have more detailed questions. Yes.
You used to have to buy insurance if you were in the 100-year floodplain. I see your maps now show 500-year delineation. Do you have to buy insurance for that 500-year event?
You do not. That is not a mandatory purchase.
And the rate, if you were in the 100-year floodplain and it now is a floodway, then that's the risk you're talking about. It's a higher risk, so insurance goes up, or what's the difference between the floodway insurance and the 100-year insurance?
So if you're already paying flood insurance, your premium won't go up unless your base flood elevation is changing. So the rate itself is based on the base flood elevation, and if you're now, so if the surface elevation of the flood height is going up, you're now that much farther below the surface elevation, so that's really what's going to drive it. If you're in the floodway and there's no increase in that elevation of the floodwater, your rate isn't going to change. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, but I guess I was trying to figure out how it works. If someone has their current flood insurance and then this map comes into play, and I mean,
It should lock them in at that rate if they're already paying for that
yeah,
flood
so they're
insurance.
locked in, and then there's no situations where the insurance company has to go back to you and no one has to say where is that level, the base flood elevation.
The insurance provider might look at that base flood elevation, but the floodway won't be the driving force. It will be the change of the BFE. Do you want to?
Oh, I was just going to talk about the floodplain and the floodway a little bit to give you a little more clarification on the difference between the two. So the floodway is an additional model that we do that shows if we were to encroach in the floodplain, how much we can encroach in to raise the floodwaters. No more than, I think actually City of Brush limits are 0.5 feet. The FEMA regulation is up to 1 foot surcharge for the floodway. So it's basically a model that shows how much you can encroach into the floodplain to have a surcharge in the water surface. And so that's what it's showing you. So as far as insurance premiums go, it doesn't make any difference. But there is a difference as far as when a homeowner wants to maybe, you know, do some development. You know, there's certain limitations of that, but it's not a total restriction. So there's just some additional steps that you need to take in order to do any changes to a home in the floodway.
Was it 0 rise?
Yeah, you basically have to show a 0 rise when you're doing any development in the floodway.
Okay.
One question is, your slide said a public meeting on the 12th, but we've been discussing it, it's gonna be more of an open house?
Yes, it's
So
open house.
It's an
Yeah.
open house where people can come up to your office, your agency and ask those questions.
Yes, it's going to be an open house style.
Okay.
And we'll also have FEMA and insurance specialists there, and we'll have laptop stations set up so that if property owners want to go through their individual properties, they can get one-on-one advice and just look at it at a finer scale.
Where does that meeting take place?
It's over at the Morgan County Fairgrounds in the Mark Art Event Center. And we have that open house scheduled to begin at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, July 12th. And these folks have assured me that they will stay as long as it takes to answer everyone's questions who attends. I kept pressing for an end time, and they wouldn't give me one. So they're here to serve us that evening.
We're from the government. We're here to help.
We've heard that.
Okay, I'm going to pass it back to Twee.
She has one other interesting file here that's kind of fun from a technology standpoint that I just thought you guys might enjoy seeing. And they'll have this available at the open house on July 12th. So with that, we'll turn it back to Twee.
Okay, so this is a KMZ file, and I don't really know what KMZ stands for, but it's through Google Earth. And it's a GIS platform, and then we just overlaid all of the floodplain limits, you know, the proposed and the effective, the old limits, so you can kind of see what they are. So the red is the floodway, the light blue is our proposed floodplain, and then the red, and we can probably change some of the settings here, but the red, you can kind of see that red outline. That's the effective floodplain right now for the city of Brush. So you can really see, and the parcels are overlaid on this too. So we're able to pull up, you know, our addresses. We can search for addresses here. We can actually click on the parcel data and find out who the property owner is and all sorts of things. So we'll be prepared to answer any questions and help people determine, you know, where they are, whether things have changed and where they live. So it's kind of a cool little program. But we'll have that available for the open house meeting.
So the blue is what where
Is the
floodplain
proposed
is?
floodplain
Okay.
limits. Yep.
Okay, because I had heard that certain areas of the city would be out of the floodplain, other areas of the city might be in it.
Right, and so you see that in here is an area that is no longer going to be in. That's an example of an area that is now will no longer be in the floodplain.
Oh yeah, I'm not seeing how.
Okay, so the red line is where your effective.
Oh, I'm not seeing that
There's a
red
little
line.
red
Oh
line.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, that's why we need to change that
Okay.
for the open house, but
Okay. And where can we
overlaying
go to see
everything
that?
really. I'm
Can
sorry.
people go online, you say, to see this floodplain
We don't
before
have
that
this
meeting?
online right now, but we could probably make something like this available if you think that would be helpful.
I think it would be.
Okay.
Because some people are going to know how their address is affected by it. If they don't have a map to look at before the meeting, they may not be concerned because they
Okay.
don't have the information. So.
At a staff level, we are taking some steps to do outreach to the community to make sure they know about the open house. One is you've got a little flyer in front of you this evening. That's a display ad that's going to run in the Brush News Tribune the next 2 Wednesdays, and then it will also run in the Fort Morgan Times on Monday, July 11th. Additionally, the county has been sending out letters of notification to property owners in the county outside of city limits that if their property's been impacted by a change. The city of Brush is still working to prepare something like that for our residents that would be impacted. And then we're also working on the city's website to put together a special area that talks specifically about the floodplain, flood maps. And so hope to have all of this information available so people can go to our website and hopefully be able to click on a map, maybe not the interactive portion, but be able to at least make out streets and the changes in the floodplains. And then hopefully this presentation this evening will have that set up as a link that somebody could listen to this again, just to make sure they understand what we're talking about.
So we're planning on getting all the residents notified before this July 12th meeting?
Residents
I
that
mean,
are
that
affected.
only gives us
Yes.
10 days, okay.
Residents that are affected by a change.
By a change,
By a
okay.
change. Let me be
Okay.
real clear. By
All
a
right.
change.
Yeah,
So, but that's why we're using more than one outreach method. We'll also be talking to the chamber to talk about using their email distribution system, possibly some other radio stations, Facebook. You know, we're looking at a multitude of varieties to make sure people are aware that this is something that's being looked at. Trying to be very, very transparent. So if somebody misses this, they just weren't paying attention.
Also, our final part of this outreach is we've given each of the council members a flyer so that if you know of anyone that lives in the affected area, you know, to visit with them, let them know, because each one of us here knows someone or probably dozens of people that live on the eastern part of the city. So get the word out so that everyone is aware.
Is there a way to get a copy or for us to see
Yeah.
that little red outlined area that's changing?
Yeah.
Where that little line is, so that we can kind of reach out to those in our ward? Because, like me, that looks like it's Ward 2.
We will work
Portion
on
of
seeing
it.
what we can do to accommodate that request.
Yeah, just
Yeah, we need that.
something to help me so I can try and reach out to some of them. Because, well, and working where I work in a financial institution, I've got a lot of customers who are going to be saying, can I get rid of it? Are you going to recalculate me? Am I?
Yeah, no, we'll see what we can do to accommodate that.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Was that one Highway 76 or Highway 6?
Oh, I think it's the same crossing, Highway 6 and 76 are, it was labeled like that on Google Earth, but it's 76. Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause I was trying to get Highway 6 over there and.
Yeah, you can see the I-76 is actually, the label is under the number 6. I don't know why.
One of the state highways overlaps with 76.
Yeah.
Any other questions or?
So when
concerns?
people come to the meeting on July 12th, they can punch in their address and get
Yes.
an estimate on an increase or decrease in their insurance rates?
So we'll have stations set up for the open house. FEMA will be there, the state, and then any local officials who want to help. And the way we've done it in the past, it's been really successful, is just have a map like this up, and then we'll type in the address for the homeowner. They'll come up to our station, and then we can show them what the changes are. It'll pull up right into wherever their property is. So, I mean, the good news is that there's still a year before these maps become effective. So, it's good that we're getting the word out and doing the outreach early. And that there's always opportunity. If you feel that you need to do more outreach, you still have plenty of time to do that before they become effective. So, okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Let's move along. Management, there's nothing. Finance. I need a motion to approve
I move
finance.
that we approve disbursements and payroll from June 13th through 27th, 2016, totaling $289,656.61.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Quinlan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Bain.
Yes.
Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Becker.
Yes.
Counselor Dykes.
Yes.
Okay, on staff reports. Police, Travis.
I don't have a whole lot to report, but I saw last week through the CACP conference in Grand Junction.
Travis, will you grab the microphone, please? Thank you.
So the body cameras was a hot topic. Terrorism was another big hot topic, even in our area. Had some experts come in and talk about terrorism. And got some aesthetics about ready to go up tomorrow. We got our new desks in for the front office ladies, so those should be prepared and started tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Tyler, marketing.
Yes, indeed. One thing I want to bring to council's attention, if you're not aware of it, is the Morgan County Tourism Panel, on which I sit. Last year, we approved to move forward with a wayfinding signage master plan. And so it's not implementing a signage, but a plan to implement signage all across the county, including within the municipalities as well. And so just a few months ago, they being the county, finally signed a contract with a company out of the Boulder area, Tangram. And so they had an initial meeting a few weeks ago at the county's office just to touch base on things and lay out somewhat of a timeline. And at one point, they're going to want feedback and have some meetings with the communities and community leaders as well. And they sent out an initial email following that, requesting any ideas and thoughts about specific places where people thought signage should go. And this whole idea is not so much for things within your community that everybody, like the grocery store, for example, but tourism related. And of course, some of it can be community related, like hospitals. Museum would be a good one because that crosses both boundaries as well. But be thinking about that. If you have any thoughts or ideas, feel free to pass that on to me. And you'll probably be seeing more of that in the news and just updates in the community in upcoming months. And so the plan is, once we get the master plan in place, is that the Morgan County Tourism Panel, they're going to sit down with each municipality and talk about the cost involved and what type of partnership that can be done there in order to implement the signage. And they're going to be somewhat a universal design, but at the same time have it customized to different degrees to each community as well. So it shows that consistency around the county, but also individualized as well. So all that will be part of the planning process, and they've done this with other cities and colleges and different types of settings as well. So I just wanted the council to be aware of that. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know now or later.
Nice, thank you.
You bet.
Andrea.
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay, Karen will be back. Monty.
Okay, a few quick updates. The first one is the downtown project, or phase 4 of the brush revitalization project, still ongoing. They're kind of held up on the east side of town on Edmond Street, where they're trying to work through some conflicts with some other utility lines that are there. But once they move through that, which should be in the next week or two, then everything should accelerate and move further down towards Colorado Avenue, and then on to crossing Clayton Street on Edmond Street. So that's still moving forward. Also on Mill Street, that's an FHWA project that we're seeking funding, from the Federal Highways Administration for that. They're working on task orders right now, which is the funding mechanism for the city to acquire those federal funds, and it's under an environmental review process now. So we're crossing our fingers that we can get all these clearances completed well before the construction season ends this year. We would like to get those potholes addressed on East Mill Street. The English Feedlot Cleanup project, that one's going very well. The consultants that's been working on that, or contractors, I imagine they're probably about 60% complete at this point. So if you go by the feedlot, you'll see that the majority of those pins are being taken down. And what we hope happens is that soon after they complete that cleanup of the pins and corrals, that hopefully Tyler will be getting the news from the Blueprint Colorado, Blueprint 2.0, and that's a reuse study that we applied a grant for that, and we're hoping that occurs so we can meet that one goal that the council had in regards to master planning the feedlot. So we're hoping that takes place. The only other thing that may come about is we may come in end of the year request to see if we can get some funding to start leveling the feedlot area. So all those little dips and hills, the low spots collect water. We need to break that up really good just to get rid of the pooling and ponding water. Karen has a current property owner interested in annexation into the city, so we're just awaiting a petition from them. That's more or less an application to move forward. Once we get that, we will bring that to city council for discussion. And we currently have a bid packet out for a water line project that takes a water line from Colorado Avenue and brings it down Mill Street to approximately the Cameron Street area. And that's to loop some of the city water, and that's for sanitary purposes, keep it cleaner, keep the water moving, and replace one older line. And so that's out to bid right now too for any interested contractors. And everything else is our work session items tonight.
Okay. We can come back to Karen, see if she has anything. Mayor and council reports.
I had several concerns about school security for the upcoming school year. Had several people ask if the new police, the chief had any plans on that, or what we were going to do about that, especially with the recent attack in Orlando. I know for me, working in the middle school, it's always nice to see the police officers come into the building, on foot patrol, and it's always nice to see their vehicles out in front of the school. And so it's nice when they walk through the building and they come into the classroom and they say hi, and they shake your hand, they talk to the students a little bit. So just had several concerns about that for the upcoming school year.
Okay. Chief and I will talk about that a little bit more. At the next meeting we'll have Chief present. But one of the things just to be aware for all council is that we do have the school liaison officer program. In past years it used to be a school resource officer, but the funding for that dried up. Once that dried up, there were some discussions about the school district and the city working together to keep a program, but then the school district didn't have the funds for that, so that went to the wayside. So instead of an SRO, we had started working out a school liaison officer program where a portion of each officer's time they try and get into the school still and make some presence there, and they actually do this at different times of the day, so it's not right on a certain hour. You have to keep everybody on edge. So we do have some of that going on already, and the chief has visited with the superintendent at least once already, but we'll fine tune that a little bit.
Yeah, I think if we can get some of that information out before the school year starts, what we're doing to help parents feel comfortable.
And one other thing, interesting news is that we do have Mary Kay in the police department and Andrea that are going to be going to a grant writing course, and part of that is that the chief does have some longer term visions of applying for more grants. So one grant that we weren't able to capitalize on this year was the marijuana money that's coming in for communities that don't have a facility where there's tax money coming in. You can apply through the state. They have about $1 million a year. But we thought that one thing that we may try and do in the future is apply for that marijuana sales tax money and get some grants to help maybe offset that time of officers being in schools, just to increase the visibility again.
Okay. Other reports?
Does everybody want to give reports from Vale tonight? I'd like to give the legislative update at least.
Sure.
Why it's still fresh in my mind.
Sure. Yeah. CML reports.
Yeah. This was interesting. An interesting year for the legislative updates. First of all, I thought I would tell Kim, she'll be interested to know that golf carts and ATVs are now allowed to cross state highways. So that helps us to come back and revisit any issues. I did hear that. As far as I'll talk first about the indigency And if I talk a little bit funny, I have new teeth from Comom. So it's awesome. So just bear with me. Well, I'm getting used to them. Indigency was the House Bill 1709 that passed. And Steve talked a little bit about the state wants to mandate that we have indigent people have and push the lawyers on people. That's not exactly the way it will be. Lawyers will be present, and at that point during, and this is only people who are brought in on arrest, so it doesn't apply to summons, but people who are brought in and who are detained have a right to a lawyer. And then at that time, it should be a court-appointed lawyer. And if the person can't afford a lawyer, and then they can decide at arraignment whether or not to go forward with the lawyer or pro se. So does that clear that up for everybody? It is an unfunded mandate that was brought up. And so I don't know how we're going to deal with that. Personally, I think that Morgan County has plenty of lawyers who could be doing a little bit of pro bono work, maybe. But I guess we can deal with that as it comes along. Were you going to say something, Bo? I see you thinking.
I think it's only for people who are incarcerated for the first appearance.
Yeah, that's
that
what
they're supposed to be a lawyer made available, and Judge Jones indicated that he usually resolves that with a personal cognizance bond before the appearance date, so that they are not incarcerated on that particular time.
Attorney should be made available on advisement. Then the person can decide whether to go on pro se. So, and these are only people that are arrested and not brought in on summons.
They're incarcerated at the time of the appearance.
That was my understanding.
So if they're released before appearance, then that appointed attorney doesn't apply.
Well, actually it does, because if on the next appearance, if there's jail time, that there's going to be jail time, then we still need to have a court-appointed attorney.
That's a different provision.
That's not my understanding.
Okay.
And this came from, maybe we can have.
We'll have to look into that.
Well, Jeff Wilson is the one who gave the presentation and the legal staff, so that's my understanding. The other part of debtor's prison, as it was called, we can't jail people for non-payment of fines, so it leaves us with other ways to collect. It only applies to fines, it doesn't apply to restitution, but we have to be able to get the money from deadbeats from other ways, like scheduled payments, or browbeating, whatever we can do, but we can't jail people for lack of payment of fine. Let's see, there were some other utilization of the contempt of court process would work, but at the end of contempt of court is usually, the big hammer is usually jail time. So we can bring people in on contempt of court for non-payment, but still we can't put them in jail. There were a couple of interesting ones about pot. Pesticide application will be left up to the state health department and local health departments to regulate what kind of pesticides go on our crops of pot. The feds aren't going to get involved because it's illegal, of course.
It's illegal.
Exactly, and they don't want any part of it. Transporting marijuana must have a state and local license to transport. So I don't know how that will get dealt with, but that's coming down the pike. Community service was talked about, and a way to word community service so that it doesn't look like slavery. With an ACLU concern about, is community service slavery? Just relabeled. And that was just a discussion that came up. So I don't think that we will see any changes at this level. Criminal justice, there's going to be an easier way to seal records at the time of sentencing or closing out a case where if a case is either deferred or the case is closed out, people don't have to go back and refile in district court. It can be done at the time. So I guess that we also have some deferred sentences in our courts here, Bo.
Excuse me, yes, we do.
We do have that tool, so in essence what happened is that at the time that it's just set for, if it's a year out, it's set to be sealed a year out, and so the paperwork is essentially done at the time. So the person doesn't have to come back in a year and re-ask, I guess.
Yeah, now it's a separate civil case in the district court to seal those records. And I think the effort is to try to eliminate the step of having to go to the district court in a civil case in order to seal in certain limited instances.
Okay.
Deferred judgment is one, I think, acquittal or dismissal. The other two.
So it's a way to streamline that process. And I think that was it. One more about marijuana was the difference in enclosures between medical and retail grow facilities. Is that if in a retail or personal use establishment for grows, if there are children around, it must be in an enclosed, confined place. And as far as marijuana grows, those all have to be in confined, no open grows.
Okay. I'd like to jump back and give Karen an opportunity for a staff report. You're on. Pressure's on now.
Well, I've definitely been spending quite a bit of time putting things in place so that we can adequately respond to the community's questions related to the upcoming flood maps. So definitely quite a bit of time related to that, and of course you saw some of that here this evening. And then did spend the bulk of my week also at the Colorado Municipal League Conference. It's been a few years since I've been there. So some of the things I did was to represent the city both at the CIRSA, which is our insurance company's safety forum, and then also at their general membership meeting, which they hold once a year. And then I did have one session that I was going to highlight for you guys, just a couple of takeaways from there, and that is inside the mind of the developer. You know, that was one of the sessions, and I believe Rick attended that one also. But just a couple of quick, easy takeaways from that, and that is retail is definitely in transition. We've seen that for quite a while. Just when you go to different places and shopping and thinking about how the internet has changed retailing and shopping, and the number of brick and mortar stores is definitely reducing. So you're seeing that brick and mortar do some contraction at this point. So it's definitely a time of transition. And part of what's going on when you look at that is within a community, you're looking to make those retail points more of a destination and looking at what are the right synergy of uses. So you're looking at a younger group of our population wanting to invest money in an experience. So the coin word that they were using was entertainment, you know, where you're looking at some place to go have some fun in addition to the shopping. So it's definitely that combination of kind of things that you're seeing out in that forum. And so those were probably the big easy takeaways from that session. Just it'll be interesting to see how that impacts us going forward with different opportunities, and just it's always kind of good to keep tabs on what the retail industry and the developers are thinking.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Kim, Rick, yourself?
Two of the top that I went to, tried to go to one at each time session, but two of the top ones I think that I got a lot out of was Rick and I went to one on the body cameras, and there was a gentleman from Lone Tree gave that presentation, and he talked about how they started out with the ones on the glasses, and the community and kids really didn't like that. The ones on the shoulders, they had issues with them going every which way, so they ended up with the ones on the front. And at first, nobody wanted nothing to do with them because they thought it was more of the micromanaging and everything I do is going to be wrong. Then once the officers got it and had a few court cases, they decided that that was something that was beneficial for both sides. And like we had talked once before about storage is one of the biggest things, because some things you can keep. If it's a traffic stop, they could keep it for a month or 2 months and get rid of it. But if there's a case that's ongoing, they got to keep it. If it's anybody that can appeal, they got to keep it. If they have prison time, they got to keep it until they're out. So that's a big thing. And they, Lone Tree, after all of their discovery and checking on things, it was easier to go to a form of the cloud that is a CIA, FBI backed. So it's got a lot of protection, and that saved them a lot of money. But he said, unfortunately, it's coming. If communities don't think they can afford it, they're going to have to figure it out, because it's going to come to where officers are going to have it to keep themselves safe and help other community members if they're victims. But it was really interesting. And then I went to one that had to do with panhandling. A few communities that put ordinances in and have been sued by the ALCU. And yeah, you basically can tell them they can't do it in the street. Pretty much is where it's at right now. You're supposed to, rather than tell them things that they can't do, whether they're down on their luck, an illness, whatever, try and come up with options to help steer them different ways to help them out. So instead of kicking them out a doorway that they can't sleep at, make safer suggestions where they won't maybe get stepped on, safer in the community. So it was really interesting because just kind of an eye-opener. And recently talked to a few people that work in the community, and they said there's more in Morgan County that most people realize. And so that was kind of interesting to find out. You know, about the only thing you can do is like the man that used to go downtown Denver or the big cities, and they'd come wash your windows, and then basically like you would stand there until you paid them. That's about the only thing that you can restrict right now. But there was a lot of good ones.
Rick?
Yeah, one thing I'd point out too, Kim was talking about with the body cameras, a lot of the officers, the fear that they had was now that everything is being filmed, when they write a report up about the incident, if they don't include every single thing that video is going to show, is that going to hurt their case, or is that going to, what it's actually done in practice is allow the officers to really write a shorter report, and to protect them, so they put in any other details can be seen in watching the video. So, and the videos have been very useful for district attorneys and stuff like that, because you see exactly what happened. You know, you don't have to worry about his word against the citizen's word. You have the evidence right there, so that's been really useful. Probably not as exciting maybe a class, but I got a lot out of it, was the budgeting and finance information. They talked about how enterprise funds are affected by the Taper Amendment, which I didn't really understand fully before, but with enterprise funds being affected by the Taper Amendment allows cities to issue debt for problems that they have without taking it to a vote of the people, which is really a good thing when you consider if you have like an enterprise like your water fund, if you have a water quality issue and you needed to fix that and you needed to issue debt in order to do it, if you had to take it to a vote of the people and the people said no, you'd be stuck. So this way you don't have that consideration to worry about. So that was an interesting session that we had.
Our general session I thought was pretty inspiring, and it kind of rejuvenates you as to, you know, why we ran for office and since we're elected. And this is the book Nice Bike was the guy's book that he wrote, and it just gives tips for how to treat people, you know, really, and why you were again, we ran for office, and so we were elected. So that means that we're not wallflowers, that we agreed to go out and be a voice for our community, and to kind of dare to make a difference, if nothing else, and that you have to be a part of the community, get to know your constituents, and find out what they really want, and know their story. And so that was pretty inspiring. It was good, a good opening session. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting too, I also went to a session on how to run effective meetings, and rather than going with Robert's Rules, which they say, you know, is like 600 and some pages, and that there's just too much stuff in there to really follow. Nobody really knows or understands Robert's Rules. So the guy that did the presentation, he calls them Bob's Rules, and he simplified them, and so, you know, that may be something that we can go over, and just how to conduct a good meeting, because it's important. The story that he told was how the first time that he was represented, he was a city attorney, and he met a young girl who had made a poster, and she was just happy that she came to the council meeting to thank the council members for improving a park. And so she had made a big old homemade sign, and she was gonna, you know, when she got the opportunity, she wanted to just say thank you. Well, that was a dysfunctional council, and as the meeting got started, they started fighting with each other, and it got ugly. There was name calling, and it just kind of blew up, and they never got to the point where they could even introduce, you know, visitors. And so the mom and the daughter left before the meeting ever ended, because it was, like I said, she said it wasn't a good place for the child to be, and they just left. And then the very next day, the mom called the city attorney and said, you know, this is a joke, you guys are embarrassing, what are you going to do? And so, and really, that impression that we have on our citizens either makes people anti-government or not. We, you know, we're the face that either can build trust or we destroy it. So how important it is that we conduct our meetings efficiently and properly, and that we do the right things. So I thought that was, if you think about it in that perspective, you know, it's like, you know, we can influence citizens' evaluation of us. And then the other thing that I thought was kind of interesting was they were talking about infrastructure for a healthy community, how infrastructure can influence a healthy community. And again, one of the things they survey was taken over the state of Colorado, and as usual, 80% of the community members talked about how the lack of housing is a huge problem. So it's not only, you know, of course here in small town Brush, but in the state of Colorado, all communities are facing that issue. How do you have adequate housing for people to live in your community? And again, if you want jobs, or you need employees need workers, you know, how do you house them? So that's one of the biggest issues, not only for us, but throughout the state. People found that. So good. I thought there were some really good sessions as well.
One thing that would help the city staff is if there are any topics or items that you feel are worthy to put on at our next council retreat to talk about our priorities for 2017, email those to Andrea, and just label those 2017 priorities. And they're just for idea generation. It's not necessarily that they're gonna be a priority. It's when all of you get together and set those priorities, just so that we don't lose sight of those. That would help us out.
Can I add a couple things, Vicky?
Sure.
I thought that brush rush went really well Saturday. it was the first time my 3 kids had ran a race, and they loved it. I mean, it wasn't too long to where it wore 'em out, but it was long enough to challenge them. So
Taste of it.
yeah, they got a taste of it. Yeah, so I thought that was really good. And the mosquito control last 2 weeks, you know, has been good. I think because we go outside a lot for summer school, and I go out to the middle school football field. I don't get bit. I go over to the ropes course by the high school, and I don't get bit. So last couple of weeks, I've seen an improvement. So I think it's going okay.
All right. Okay. Anything else from council? Okay, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned, and we'll get into our work session shortly.